I'd like to call to order the February 18th, 2021 meeting of the Wilsonville City Council at 7 p.m. and request a roll call from the city recorder.
Councillor Linville?
Here.
Councillor West?
Here.
Council President Ockervall?
Here.
Councillor Lehan?
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Here. Will the city manager please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And I would ask the councilors to please mute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a full house tonight.
I'm open to a motion to approve the order of agenda as amended.
Your Honor, I move to approve the order agenda as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Your Honor, I second.
We have a motion and second to approve the order of agenda as amended. All in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Well, it's been obviously a very busy week for everyone in our city and in our region, and I wanted to take a moment to think about all of the people who had experienced and maybe still are experiencing difficulties from this unprecedented ice storm, not only here in Wilsonville, but across Oregon, and then storms in other parts of the country. So we saw some really great work by our city staff, by local businesses helping people, neighbors. There were just all kinds of cooperation and collaboration going on, and I'm just really glad about that. And we're going to hear more about it later in the agenda with a report by Mr. Montalvo in our Department of Public Works. So I just had a couple of things to go through that have been activities that I participated in as mayor. I won't list out all the meetings. There were meetings, though, with Clackamas County mayors, Washington County mayors, and also with the county chair in each of those counties. And I really learned a lot from those, and I appreciate the coordination that we're hearing from our region to not only keep everybody as up to date as possible on the protections and vaccination schedules we're doing our best on to get people vaccinated, but also relative to the storm. We also had a number of meetings with the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium, and in that group, we're hearing a lot about the activities of our legislature and things that are going forward, and I'll keep you updated if any big developments. But I think we'll hear more about that as this week goes on. I had the opportunity to meet with speaking of the mayors of Oregon, I also had this great opportunity to meet with the mayor of Kitakata. We had and it was a Zoom meeting, I did not go to Japan, and also the person who is Mr. Cosgrove's counterpart, who's called the supervisor of that area, and a couple of other citizens. And along with me in the meeting were two Wilsonville staff members, Erica in Parks and Recreation, who's going to be the liaison and really the staff support to our Kitakata Sister City Committee, and also Zoe. And so really the purpose of the meeting, I wanted to tell you all a couple of great things I heard. As you know, this sister city relationship has been going on for 33 years. And volunteers in Wilsonville have been working on it. Lots of students have gone to Japan, and people have hosted people from Kitakata. They talked about their incredible, the disaster, as they refer to it, with the earthquake in 2011, and they really appreciated I know Councillor Lehan and former Mayor Knapp were involved with that exchange program, and they just appreciated all of the people who reached out to them and helped them after that disaster. They are very, very fond of the city of Wilsonville. And as you might know, the way the population is changing in Japan, it is reducing. They have a very low birth rate, and in the area of Kitakata, they have now reduced from 2 high schools to 1 high school, and they told us that the theme of their new high school is that their goal is that their students would be global citizens, and they took their inspiration for that from the Wilsonville Sister City Exchange program. So it's quite impressive. And there are also adults who business people who come back and forth in these exchanges, and they are interested in learning more about our agricultural programs, such as wineries, hop growing, and so forth, because of their sort of corollary industry with a special production of rice and sake in that area. There's a rolling schedule of meetings published on the city website. I encourage you to look at that. We also have it in our council packet, and you can see all of the citizen meetings coming up. I won't go into all of those details right now. But I do want to announce that the next meeting of the Wilsonville City Council is going to be March 1st, 2021. Let's now talk about the City Council representation assignments to 2 committees, the Tourism and Tourism Promotion at Wilsonville Metro Community Enhancement Committee. I am recommending 3 city councilor appointments to these 2 committees, and detailed facts about all of the committees were shared at our February 1st, or about these 2 committees. It was really shared in detail at our February 1st meeting of the council at our work session. And we talked about that and also had a report. And there's also a report in today's meeting, today's meeting packet, so I will not go into detail. And I do want to refer everybody who wants to find out more about our boards and committees to our website. There's a great section under government and then boards and committees. And there you can read a lot more about these 2 committees. So we've discussed who would be on these committees, and I would like to ask for a motion to appoint Councilor Lehan to serve as the City Council liaison and ex officio member of the Tourism Promotion Committee. Do I have a motion? Councilor Linville.
Your Honor, I move that Councilor Lehan serve as the representative from the City Council on the Tourism Committee.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Councilor Ackerball. We discussed this quite a bit. We probably don't have much discussion, but is there any?
Congrats.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
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 Motion pass, or I will pass as well. Motion passes 5-0. I also would like to ask for a motion to appoint Councilors Joanne Linville and Ben West to serve, Councilor Joanne Linville and Councilor Ben West to serve at the City Council voting members on the Wilsonville Metro Community Enhancement Committee. Do I have a motion?
Okay, did I raise my hand? I don't know.
You did.
I move to appoint Councilors Linville and Councilor West to the Metro Enhancement Committee.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
We still can vote even though we're the ones being appointed?
Yes.
Okay.
That was an easy discussion. So all those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, councilors. Now I'll move on to our next item, and this is regarding a letter that I want to send to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners regarding the vehicle registration fee. And so we have learned recently that the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners is considering reversing an earlier decision from 2019 to develop what I consider to be a pretty desperately needed way to fund local road maintenance in our county and city. And this is a $30 vehicle registration fee that is now in use at this current time. And this fee was arrived at after considerable public input, discussions with businesses, and working with cities and community planning organizations on what would be an appropriate amount. And what's important to realize, I think is really important about this, is that the Clackamas County has recognized this dire need for additional regular source of funds to maintain over 1,400 miles of county roads. And that includes about 40 miles that are situated within Clackamas County cities. The county had estimated $17 million annual shortfall for road maintenance and was considering turning back to gravel some of the paved roads at that time. So this is not a new problem, but the situation has arisen over the past 20 years as cars have become more efficient and less gas tax is generated that supports road construction and maintenance. And additionally, another thing that's been happening, as we've all heard over the last decades, is the federal government no longer provides the same level of financial support to state and local governments for public infrastructure as they did from the 50s through the 80s. Things are different now. So prior to 2019, unlike Multnomah and Washington counties, Clackamas County is different. We only had one source of road funding, and that was the state shared gas tax revenue for road construction and maintenance. These other counties have had other road funding sources, including a county vehicle registration fee, special property tax assessment, and a local gas tax. So county commissioners and the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, and that's one that you hear us talk about in these meetings often. It's called the C4 Committee, where all these cities in Clackamas County meet and discuss common issues and find solutions. They spent basically, I think it's been about 10 years working to find solutions for road maintenance until this consensus was achieved. And that was the locally controlled vehicle registration fee. So how do the cities of Clackamas County benefit from this road funding source? I had remembered, I first knew about this in 2019, watching the city council vote on it, and there was a unanimous vote in January of 2019 to support this. So the state, there's a state law that says that cities of Clackamas County would receive 40% of the revenue. So of that 40%, it goes to cities. Wilsonville receives about 10%, and those funds are really critical to maintain Wilsonville's 78 miles of paved roads and to support high priority transportation improvements such as the Beckman Dip, Beckman Road, and Brown Road upgrades, and to make safety, ADA, and sidewalk infill improvements. So additionally, the Board of County Commissioners had created a strategic investment fund for multi-jurisdictional transportation projects within that road tax, and that was for these increasingly congested urban-rural interface roadways that we also hear about a lot. An example that would qualify for using that bit of money is the 65th Avenue, Elligson, and Stafford Road intersections just east of Wilsonville. And that is in unincorporated Clackamas County, so they're not city roads. So we know that these roads do not get better on their own. They don't fix themselves. And we also know that road maintenance is never free. I can't imagine there's no way to fix these roads without paying for them. And safety on our roads is very important. Not only safety, but good roads that get people to where they need to go for their jobs and essential needs. So if this good funding source that was previously approved is removed, I believe we'll be signing ourselves up for even higher costs when we need to do what would probably be emergency repair to bring them up to the level of condition that they need to be. So I think those are some things I just wanted to say. We could get more from the staff on this, but these vehicle registration funds are by state law required to be spent on road-related projects that can include pedestrian safety and ADA requirements in conjunction with the road work. Currently, there's a little bit more information in the letter, and Mr. Cosgrove, are we able to share that letter on the screen? Everybody was sent it. What's the easiest way to do that?
We have it loaded. Yeah, if you give us just a second, Mayor, it's in the packet, so we're gonna see if we can share a screen here.
Sorry, I didn't give you notice on this, and so I just feel like if this mechanism goes away, we're going to be left with a gigantic hole.
I will note that the items for this agenda, or the supplemental material for this agenda item did go out after the packet was sent out, so it came to you in a separate email. So if anybody's interested in reading the information that staff sent to council, we do have that available.
So this is the letter that we have drafted, and I think there's a second page if you can scroll down, please.
Yeah, can scroll down, yeah, okay.
And here's the graphic that was actually included in the council packet in 2019 that really stuck with me. You can see how Clackamas County just doesn't have the same mechanisms for taking care of their roads that these other two counties do. So I'm open to a motion to approve this letter to be signed by me as mayor representing the Wilsonville City Council.
Wait a second.
Mr. Lehan?
Yes, I was going to raise my little other hand, but there, now it is. Yes, I would be happy to make a motion to, now it disappeared. Can we see that chart again?
Pull up just the second page of that letter, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that one. I would agree with the mayor that this chart kind of tells the whole story, because look at the total road miles in Clackamas County. Clackamas County is taking care of not only more miles of road than either of the other counties. They are very challenging road miles. They go all the way to Mount Hood, to Government Camp, and to Timberline. So they are difficult roads to maintain, and in areas where there is no property tax because it's all government-owned forest land. So the ability to maintain all those roadways is a huge challenge for the county, and you can tell when you leave the city of Wilsonville and get into Clackamas County roads, whether you're going down Boone's Ferry on the other side of the river, and all of a sudden it's pothole city, or out Westfall, same thing happens. I think a lot of the residents fix their own potholes because they get so bad between here and Sherwood.
Excuse me, Councilor Lehan. May I ask that I just realized.
Oh, that's discussion.
If you could please make the motion.
Yeah, so my motion would be that we do this, send this letter expressing our support for the road utility fee.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And so now I'll open it up to discussion. And Councilor Lehan, if you want to finish that.
Yeah.
other people
Well,
may-
I mean, that's just, it's been a challenge always for Clackamas County, and the other two counties are way ahead of us in terms of stepping up to maintain their county roads. And I would just say it shows. You get into Washington County on the other side of Sherwood, all of a sudden the roads are way better.
Thank you.
And just one other thing that you already pointed out, not maintaining the roads is extremely expensive, as we discovered when we didn't have a road maintenance fee on our water bill. Before that and after we did, the cost of maintaining the roads actually dropped after 5 years, because once you get your roads up to a certain level of maintenance, then you can maintain them there for pretty cheap. But if you let them drop to where when you need to repair them, you have to do a whole replacement of the substrate and everything else, it's extremely expensive.
One more point, any other points? Counselor
Kim?
Linville.
Is there a second?
Oh, we're looking at the blue hand. Okay, Counselor Linville, please.
I just had a clarification if I could get this, because this is new to me, and I just wanted to clarify both for myself and for citizens that are listening. There was, Mayor, you had mentioned when you were having your discussion on this item, an action that was taken in 2019, and that this, if it went away, it would cause difficulty. So my question for clarification is this vehicle registration fee, which is anticipated to be $30, I believe, is it a new fee, or is it a continuing fee? And if it is a continuing fee, what puts it in jeopardy? Why would it go away if that's the case?
It was, and I don't know if staff wants to help me out with this, but this fee has been in force, and Clackamas County Commission is considering doing away with it. So in 2019, there was a very large-scale communication effort from Clackamas County, and I remember the two previous chairs had brought other ways of funding these roads to bear. And they came up with this way and spoke to cities. There was a lot of public input, and I think one of the selling points was that it did give cities some control over the funding, and as you read in the letter, it also applies some money to multi-jurisdictional areas that are kind of county-city roads. And so it is now in place, and in the letter, you can see that presently, I think I would ask Mr. Cos, well, right here you can see the revenue sources. The city, our city in particular, just as one example, we have a share of this funding coming to us as it has been approved, it is enforced. And if it is reversed, we will not have those funds for the Beckman Bridge, Beckman Dip, and some of those roads that I just described.
So Your Honor, just to kind of continue that train, thank you for that clarification. This is not something that would be new for our citizens put in place.
Correct.
This would be a continuation and would be revenue that the city of Wilsonville currently uses for the roads that are within the city of Wilsonville are included in funds that are collected in this current process. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so if it were subtracted, if it were eliminated as a tool, then not only would funding that we are planning on using in the city of Wilsonville go away, but even equally important, the county roads that we use and that our citizens use would also not have access to the funding that was coming to them to address that $17 million annual shortfall for Clackamas County roads.
And then just a final clarification, we get a percentage of the total amount of revenue that is generated by the county.
Correct.
Not just money that is collected in Wilsonville that becomes a portion. So in other words, the larger communities like Lake Oswego, Oregon City, and West Lynn, those citizens and the revenue that's generated from this vehicle registration fee, we get a portion of the revenue that they collect because we get a percentage of the total amount. Is that not correct?
I believe so. Does staff have a further clarification on that?
Yeah, it's per capita. So they collect everybody that owns a car in Clackamas County that has to get to renew their vehicle registration. That money's all pooled together, and then we get a per capita share. Their original estimate for us, I think, was $429,000. Where our actual budget is about $400,000, and thus far, I think this fiscal year we've received $120,000. So just to give a little background on this, so we're clear here. HB 2017 gave metro counties the ability to pass these VRF fees. The Board of County Commissioners that was in place at the time did pass it without a vote of the people because they were enabled to do that. And I think how it came up is that at a recent BOC meeting, one of the county commissioners made the recommendation or made an actual motion to get rid of the VRF. So that's why we brought this to you. Other cities are concerned about this because it is a significant source of funding, not just for the city, but for the county, because we all have one road network. You know, we might have a city limits boundary, but once you leave Wilsonville, as Councilor Lehan noted, you can't avoid potholes. So we're all trying to kind of row in the same direction, and this is the only funding source that Clackamas County has because they don't have the same resources that Washington County and Multnomah County has.
Thank you. Councilor Ackerball.
Thank you. I am in support of this letter because, you know, I remember the original presentation when we first viewed some of this material and the analysis about why this fee was needed. You know, nobody likes fees. Nobody, you know, wants to have another bill to pay. But as you described, Mayor, having roads is a bill to pay. Their costs will incur. And to be able to maintain our roads, of course, has a smaller cost over time than letting things go. We know that our roads are important. This is something that we hear from our community members all the time, that quality of roads is important. I think just this last week we're reminded it's important for emergency response. It's important in recovery after an event. And, you know, after this last week, we will probably be left with many more potholes and many more things to resolve and to work on. And I was glad that the letter also specifically called out that 65th Ellington and Stafford Road intersection, because I think that's another point that we hear about too. And while that is not within the city limits, it's something that we hear about from people within Wilsonville, and it's a concern. and something, that we would like to see have movement on. And I'm also, reflecting on the importance of being able to maintain these roads for our business community within Wilsonville. And that's something that we maybe haven't mentioned yet in our discussion tonight, but we have a very important business community to the city, and they depend on having quality roads in order to operate and to get their goods and services in and out of the city. And so I see this as an important issue for our residents that live here, as well as our businesses that are within the city and the county as a whole. So I am in support of this letter.
Thank you. Councillor West.
You're muted, Counselor.
Thank you, sorry. You're going to have a unanimous voice here that we all support roads and we care for infrastructure. This was one of the first votes that I took as a city councilor. It was a unanimous letter. I remember arguing or trying to argue that there'd be something in the letter to make sure that we would stress that these funds could and only would be used for road maintenance. A lot has developed over the last 2 years, and I've actually heard more and more about this vehicle registration fee from citizens, from voters, from residents. They didn't like it. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people were mad about it. And the state vehicle registration fee nearly doubled in 2017. Where's Wilsonville's portion of those funds? Tualatin did their own street fee. That money gets to stay local for Tualatin and for Tualatin roads. Why do people keep paying for fees for no transportation infrastructure? Often we pay all these costs and fees to our local governments, and we're told that they're for infrastructure and they're for roads, and they're for being responsible with their infrastructure, and the people keep not seeing that infrastructure built or managed appropriately. Specifically now in our community, 2 years later after this letter, so many people, their pocketbooks are hurting. They're sitting around the kitchen table trying to figure out how to make ends meet. Some people worry about just getting evicted. $30 can buy a week's worth of groceries for a family of 4. I think the bigger question we should also be asking right now, why this is coming up again, is we had an election. A lot of things happened in that election. And I think one of the reasons we saw change in leadership on a county level was because of this fee. And people just don't like it. And not saying that I wouldn't support it if it came across my ballot, if I saw it on my ballot and I had to vote for it. I'm not saying that I wouldn't vote for it personally, but I think that there is some evidence there that, and some consternation with the voters, that we should maybe in our letter say that we would support this going before we support the idea of it, but let's put it before the voters. Let's let them decide. And why is this being brought up again? Why is this becoming a big issue again 2 years later? What is the dissatisfaction? And I would support allowing voters to choose the next available time they could get on the ballot. But I now will not be supporting this letter, and I'll be voting no for in this letter this time around.
Thank you. Everyone has spoken on this letter, and so I will call for the vote. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Ann, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-1. We have 2 items on our communications portion of the agenda. And first up, I'm really pleased to be able to welcome the new Clackamas County Sheriff, Angie Brandenburg, and our Chief of Police, Rob Werps. I want to give Sheriff Brandenburg a little bit of an introduction because I'm so impressed with her resume, and I want to take this opportunity to share it. Sheriff Brandenburg has been employed with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office since 1992. She has an extensive resume, As I mentioned, she is a veteran who has served 9 years with the Oregon National Guard and has experience as a reserve deputy, a patrol deputy, a civil deputy, a patrol sergeant, civil sergeant, and civil commander. She spent 5 years as a public information officer and was a member of the search and rescue and SWAT teams. And before taking over as undersheriff, she served for 5 years as the director of a Safe Place Family Justice Center and led the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office Domestic Violence Enhanced Response Team. She lives in Molalla with her husband and 2 children. In addition, Sheriff Brandenburg is the first woman to be elected in the office's 175-year history. So welcome, Sheriff Brandenburg. We're pleased to welcome you and look forward to hearing about your vision for the future of law enforcement in Clackamas County.
Well, thank you very much. I've met many of you, but not all of you. I'm looking forward to finally realizing COVID will be over at some time and we can have face-to-face conversations. I enjoy getting out and meeting and talking to folks, and this is just so difficult. I know you guys are also experiencing the same thing, but I am very happy to be here tonight to talk with you all, to have you get to know me a little bit better. I know we don't have a lot of time. I could probably talk all evening. So I just want to talk with you a little bit about what we've been doing here since I took over in January. It seems like it's so much longer than what it's been with the pandemic and the wildfires and now the storms that have happened. It's just been a little crazy, and you all know that. So I think that we have a great organization, I have to say, and you know that from us serving your communities for many, many years, that we're up to the task. We have great people, and we are just happy to serve and meet the needs of all of our communities. So I want to also say that, you know, as a patrol deputy and as a patrol sergeant, I worked out in the city of Wilsonville. It was a fantastic place to work, you know, rewarding and just wonderful and just such a supportive community. I just wanted to give a shout out to you that, you know, all of our folks who work out there really do feel part of the city. And thank you all. You're all part of that. It's just a very great place to work, and we just so much enjoy serving you all. So, you know, as I took over the Sheriff's Office in January 1st, my priority was to put the right people in the right places, to select a great team of leaders in our organization. Chief Wirtz is one of those great leaders. And I know you all know from working with him that he is just a fantastic leader. And we're really, I'm thankful that he is there working with you all. So thanks, Rob, for all that you do for the city of Wilsonville. And so, you know, since the first, my executive team, I've been working them really hard. I just want to talk to you about some of the things we've been working on. As I said, I could talk all night, but I know that we're time constrained. And so, you know, for me and my team is to really to look and see where, starting somewhat fresh and new with the Sheriff's Office and looking at where our opportunities for improvement are, developing priorities, setting some short-term and long-term goals. And one of those things that I realized pretty quickly is that I really wanted to take a look at our financial condition and to just have an independent outside look to look at the health of our finances. So I think it's important to show the people that we serve that we're using their monies wisely, that we are judicious, that we are good stewards of the public dollar. And so I've asked our treasurer's office, their independent elected office, an independent auditor to come in and to do a independent assessment of our finances. So that took place shortly after I took over. Had that going. Looking at hopefully having that done about March 15th. And so I think that I believe that the Sheriff's Office is fiscally responsible with the monies, and I believe this assessment is going to show that. But I really wanted to. That was one of my first priorities is to have that look, take a look, make improvements if we need to, but really to show folks that we are using their money, wisely. So the second that I know we needed to do is to take a really hard look at our resources and our staffing throughout the office. And so I've engaged an outside independent firm to come in and to look at our sheriff's office, top to bottom, our patrol, our jail, all of our social units, all of the folks who are non-sworn, very important staff who help keep our agency running, and to take this deep dive just to ensure that we're maximizing our resources in a manner that supports the mission of providing great, excellent public safety services to the public. The other part of that is that we have not grown as an agency in staffing. The Clackamas County, as you know, continues to grow. People continue moving here, which is a great thing. That means calls for service go up. So I really wanted to have an outside view to take a look and see, are we using our resources wisely? We've always done things the way we've always done things, and this is an opportunity to do things better and differently. And so looking really forward to those recommendations. The city of Wilsonville is part of that staffing study. And so we're really, looking forward to taking a look at, how we're serving you all as well. And is it, are we doing a good job? Do we have the resources that, are being allocated appropriately? So May 1st is when that comprehensive staffing study will be done. The next priority that I've had as coming into here is really to meet the needs of our community. We've been absent in a lot of our communities with our community engagement. And so for me, one of my priorities is to get out, and I can't wait till COVID's over with, because that's, I think, one of the perks of this job is to get out and meet folks in the community where they're at. And so, myself, my command staff, my deputies, my sergeants, you guys are, the cities and the contract cities are awesome because you guys, you experience that kind of small town feel, and that's one of the great things of the city of Wilsonville. I know from my time being there is to be able to get out and to shake hands and talk with folks. And so it's challenging for the rest of the rural area of Clackamas County, but there are opportunities that I think that we can really improve on in our CPOs and just in all of our communities, and just getting out and talk with folks and seeing what their needs are. Are we meeting their needs? And that just comes in developing relationships with people. So that's where, my priorities and my heart for this agency is to really get out and to meet our community. So, and I think it's important to acknowledge, too, that there are many communities that are fearful of law enforcement. We know that. I know that. And so, how do we need to meet them where they're at. So to that end, we are working with our Equity, Diversity, Inclusion officer, the new office with the county, who are making connections, and we are working on a strategy to get out and to get into all of our communities and to be accessible. So that is a priority of mine. And I'll stop talking here shortly. But one of my other passions is investing in our people, is investing in the health and the wellness of our employees so that they can take care of our community. This is a really tough, it's a difficult job. And I really want to safeguard our physical and mental health of our employees so they can really take care of you. So, working on creating a wellness unit, and just taking care of our people, so that they're in a place where they can meet your needs. So I'm going to stop talking now, unless you guys have some more questions for me. I would love to engage in some dialogue.
Councilor West, I see your hand up.
Sheriff, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today. And I want to just start by saying I have been incredibly impressed from the city of Wilsonville standpoint with the relationship with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and the contract that we have with you. It's been a great relationship, and you guys have been responsive and available, and Chief Warps himself has been somebody that I have grown to trust since being a city councilor in the city. So thank you for that. I know there's a couple big things facing law enforcement in general in these times that we have. We had Ferguson not that long ago rock our community, and it did impact the perception that people have with law enforcement as a whole. And I am curious to how what the plan is going forward with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office in helping regain that public trust or to build that trust, and what active measures are being taken by Clackamas County Sheriff's Office to do that. And then my other situation is I think on the other end of that, we have seen that also impact the ability to recruit and retain quality officers with great experience. So what are we doing uniquely to try to make sure we keep those great men and women in blue, or in our case, what are they, green? I think they're in green for us. How are we keeping those good women with the experience, with relationships in the community, and with that goal to serve the community? How are we managing that while also maintaining and building trust?
That is a very big couple of issues, and very important. It's not going to be done overnight. I think that the steps that we're taking, with our transparency, with our fiscal transparency, with our with the staffing, with our community engagement. I've been at this since January 1, and it's just not going to be a quick fix. So for us, it's to really be engaged. And I think that that with Rob and with Under Sheriff Copenhagen, being engaged with the city of Wilsonville. We really do care. And, it's for the folks that definitely are rocked by, what happened in the recent past and in the not so distant past, it's just not going to be a quick fix for law enforcement. And it's a challenge for us. And I know that for us, it hurts us that those incidents happen. And for us, for me personally, it comes down to ensuring that our folks are well trained. And so when I hear defunding the police and these different things, and that's not the answer. The answer is invest in training. It's investing in people. It's getting law enforcement into our communities and meeting people. We are from the community. We're not some separate group that just comes in and we work and then we go home. The majority of our folks, we work and we live in Clackamas County. And so, for us, it's a challenge. Law enforcement is scary to some folks. And I just think as law enforcement, we need to think differently. We need to be more accessible. And that is not expecting people to come to us, right? Because people have issues that don't come to us. They have problems. They have crime that happened to them that don't come to us. And so law enforcement needs to recognize that. And how do we get into the communities to where we're meeting people where they're at, not expecting them to come to us. So that's, I could talk more about that, but have more conversations with you about that. As far as recruiting, it is a challenge, recruiting and retaining good officers. But I think that, for me, that's why we should be investing in our folks and showing them that we care. It is a tough job, but I think it's a calling for us. I know it is for me. I know it is for Rob. You're not going to get rich doing this job, but the richness comes from serving the community and doing a good job and knowing you made a difference. So those are the folks that we're attracting to this job, and we're not lowering our standards by no means, because if we lower our standards, then you have lots of people who are doing a job that have no business being in here, and that you would not be able to trust. And so for us, it is a challenge. We are working on a recruiting campaign now, especially to get officers from other agencies. If there's anybody listening that would like to come work for us, we're a great agency. But it really is to be a great place to be a law enforcement officer. So that's my goal, and I think that it's just going to take some time. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done.
Well, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that answer, and also Councilor West's questions too. I would have, you covered some things I was going to ask. Council President Ockervall, please.
Thank you, and thanks for coming and joining our meeting this evening. It's really nice to have you here. You talked in just now as well about looking forward to the future community engagement opportunities and how you feel like that's very important. And I wonder, do you have any specific brainstorms that you've been working on or thoughts to float by or ideas of what that might look like and what that might look like specifically in Wilsonville too?
Right. So it needs to be. Been doing this since January 1, and so really looking forward to developing a strategic plan, not just to show up and have coffee, coffee with a cop, which is great, but really having a plan and not just having it that and then something else, but getting in and developing contacts in the community who are leaders in the community, right? That can introduce us and warm handoff us, for lack of a better term, with those in their community that may not be so trusting. And it's not going to be just me because we have a big community, but it's going to be my command staff. It'll be, Rob, it'll be undersheriffs, it'll be captains, lieutenants, and sergeants and deputies. So that is a big task, and it's important. And so for me is working thoughtfully and strategically to develop that plan. And part of that plan, like I said, is to work with our EDI, with the county, who has contacts with those communities, right? So that we can get into communities that are not going to reach out to us, quite frankly. And that's, for me, that's, working as a lieutenant at the director at a safe place, knowing that communities are fearful of law enforcement, and setting up a safe place to where law enforcement is in the back, so that they're not the first groups that you see when you come in there, because we like to think that we are the good guys, the approachable guys and gals, and we are, but there are impacts to different communities, and communities act differently in law enforcement. So to me, it's important, but it's important for us to not just do a check the box, let's meet for coffee once a month, but really is to have a plan in place.
Well, that is a really thoughtful answer, and I think I just want to say that how much we appreciate you coming to our meeting, and I would love to be able to continue this conversation for about 2 hours, because it's a wonderful topic, and all of us, I seriously mean that, so we would love to plan more for that, and I hope that you will use or think about Wilsonville as a place, if it fits into some focus groups or discussion groups. And Chief Werps, we really appreciate your role, and I've talked to Chief Werps several times and gotten really great answers. And I wanted to note that in our council packet under the mayor's or the city manager's report, you'll see a report from Chief Werps. So we have, I think we have a great willingness to have a great future together. So keep up, and we have our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee starting. And you're looking at a group of people who live in Wilsonville and who are on this council, I think, who really want to help answer those sensitive points that you brought up, Sheriff Brandenburg. So thank you for coming. Councilor Lehan, please.
Yes, I would, Sheriff, I would really enjoy having lunch with you sometime, well, at least when that face-to-face is allowed, and chatting more. But I just have one question, and maybe it's a hard one or maybe it's an easy one, I don't know, because it just occurred to me, because you have this giant thing behind your head on what we see, the sheriff's thing. What in the world are those leaves?
Those are oak leaves, I believe.
Of what kind of oak tree is that? It's certainly not an Oregon white oak. What oak tree looks like that?
That looks.
I have never been asked that question.
That looks very.
And I'll get back to you.
That looks like the oak leaf clusters from the military.
It probably is, but it would still be nice to know if it's an actual tree or it's just an artistic rendering of a tree, because it isn't our oak tree. It's not an Oregon oak, but anyway, I was just curious. That's an odd-looking oak leaf. So,
Well, you stumped me, but I would love to still have lunch with you.
I looked it up while we were chatting here. I looked it up on Google, and there's nowhere Clackamas County leaf on the badge. No, they don't tell you anywhere. So
I see our city manager, yes.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to share with our new sheriff, Angie Brandenburg. We're very appreciative that we have Rob, and we want to make it part of our contract that you can never, ever take him away from our city. And secondly, I just want to say, you may or may not know this, but Rob has been very involved in our DEI process. He's attended every meeting. He's fielded a lot of tough questions. He's handled it with professionalism in class, and I think is representing your agency very well. We're very pleased to have Rob as part of our community.
I agree. Thank you very much, Rob. Chief Werps, before we close out, do you have a comment? I want to give you a chance.
Thank you. As the sheriff's time, that was important that she got her time out there. And I'm excited to be part of that. Community outreach, as you all know, has been super important to me. So to have some strategic thought and a larger team behind it to work with to get this going is really exciting to me and super important. I really wanted to say thanks for all your support. And lastly, because you guys all get to talk to me plenty, I really want to give a shout out to Public Works. Those guys have really been at it for the last few days, making things happen in the city, and I just want to give them some public props today.
Thank you. And also thank you to your department for extra patrols and just really staying visible out there during this time. We appreciate it. So thank you very much, Sheriff Brandenburg and Chief Werps, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for the time tonight.
Thank you. We have two more sections on this part of our agenda, and we're running a little bit behind, but these are all important sections, so it's great. The next item is an update from Oregon Department of Transportation on the I-5 Boone Bridge and Seismic Improvement Project Feasibility Study. So with us tonight is Mr. Scott Turnoy, who is Principal Planner with Oregon Department of Transportation, ODOT. I'd also like to acknowledge the contributions of our state representative, Representative Courtney Neron, who added to some solutions by advancing legislation to keep this project front and center, which is really dealing with the bottleneck at the Boone Bridge. And I believe Mr. Turnoy has some other colleagues with him as well, Matt Freitag and Della Mosier. So welcome and thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much. I'm going to get my screen shared here in just a moment. Going here. Right. Okay. Can folks see the slideshow?
Yes.
Be a beautiful picture of the Willamette River and the I-5 Boone Bridge. So thank you so much for having us here tonight. Really appreciate the opportunity to share a study that we've recently completed. And so the intent for us tonight, I'm going to kick off our presentation. We'll try and run through it fairly quickly in the interest of time. I'll kick us off, and then I'm going to hand it off to Della Mosier from our Urban Mobility Office to talk a bit about how this project, the Boone Bridge project, fits into the broader regional context and process that we're working through there. And then she'll hand it back to me to kind of run through our study that we recently completed and then talk a little bit of a quick summary of the findings from that effort. And then we'd be happy to take any questions that you have towards the end. So with that, again, kind of a quick overview, talk about the regional context, mostly in terms of the comprehensive congestion management and mobility plan that Della's going to mention, provide a background of how we got to this point with our feasibility study, mention briefly about the study's purpose and our approach to it, and then summarize our findings and talk briefly about next steps. With that, I'll turn it over to Della.
All right, thanks, Scott. Your Honor and Councilors, for the record, my name is Della Mosier, and I'm the Deputy Director of ODOT's Urban Mobility Office. The map you see before you is one that we've shared with several stakeholders and partners over the past few months, and it is in draft form as we continue to evolve as the Urban Mobility Office with input from the Oregon Transportation Commission, the legislature, and elected leaders like those on this council. Strive to address congestion in the Portland area comprehensively by not just pushing bottlenecks around, but by managing demand and generating revenue for strategic investments through our toll program. I'd like to refer back to your earlier conversation this evening about the challenges in addressing declining gas tax revenue for transportation investments. For us, at the Oregon Department of Transportation, we have been given tools in the House Bill 2017 legislation that allow us to further diversify our transportation revenue by adding system-wide tolling. And this tolling can help pay for improvements like the I-5 Boone Bridge project. And we also want to manage congestion by adjusting the dials for traffic flow up and down through dynamic pricing through our toll program. The plan is holistic in that it includes significant proposed investments across all modes, from major interstate systems such as I-5 and I-205, to transit investments by our partners at TriMet, as well as significant investments for those who use bikeways or walkways within the ODOT-led priority projects, such as Interstate Bridge, Rose Quarter, I-205, and the Oregon 217 projects. What is not shown on this map are our intentional efforts around engaging our communities, partners, and stakeholders, as these investments are not meant to only address congestion, but to address equity and incorporate climate goals differently than we have in the past. Next slide, please. The proposed investment and implementation strategy you see before you here provides a comprehensive way to deliver these agency-led priority investments, again, using the tools provided by the legislature in House Bill 2017. I draw your attention to the purple area on this slide, which depicts the time frame when toll revenue becomes available, and at which point we can look to fund construction of projects like Phase 2 of I-205, Boone Bridge, and associated improvements, and strategic operational projects along the I-5 and 205 corridors. I'd like to caveat that this proposal is a strategy spread over 15 years, and while we are now in the first year of this long marathon, updated information related to funds that can be generated from tolls and refined cost of investments are still ahead of us. And beyond this technical homework, we will also be working with our partners, communities, and stakeholders at the direction of the Commission to look at the toll corridor limits, corridor definitions, and how net toll revenue can be used. We also want to ensure we take the time necessary to have intentional conversations around how equity and climate goals can match up with these investments. And with that, I'll turn it to Scott to cover the I-5 Boone Bridge portion of the Comprehensive Congestion Management and Mobility Plan. Scott.
Thanks, Della. I'm going to kind of provide a quick background of what led to ODOT undertaking this feasibility study concerning the I-5 Boone Bridge and adjacent interchanges. In 2018, ODOT and the city worked together on the I-5 Wilsonville facility plan, which was a successful effort and ultimately resulted in a recommended set of improvements that were ultimately added to the 2018 Regional Transportation Plan in their fiscally constrained project list. And that includes a southbound auxiliary lane between the Wilsonville entrance to I-5 southbound, going all the way to the Canby-Hubbard exit. And then that exit would become a two-lane exit. So that effort was really focused on the congestion bottleneck issue in the Wilsonville area and across the Boone Bridge. Kind of following up on that, in 2019, the Oregon legislature directed ODOT to evaluate, kind of take the next step in looking at the feasibility of a widened and seismically resilient I-5 Boone Bridge. Summer of 2019, in August, in fact, the OTC allocated $300,000 for ODOT to undertake a study to evaluate the Boone Bridge, improvements to the Boone Bridge and adjacent interchanges. And then we, in the following spring, hired a consultant team, Quincy Engineering and Associates, to help us complete that feasibility study, which we completed and submitted our report to the legislature in January of this year. So in terms of the purpose and our approach to completing this study, again, the focus really was on the feasibility of a widened and seismically resilient I-5 Boone Bridge and adjacent interchange improvements. The focus and purpose really is around addressing congestion, safety, and seismic resiliency of I-5 in this study area, and then taking into account the recommended improvements from the I-5 Wilsonville facility plan. The two options that the study really hones in on in evaluating include a phase 2 seismic retrofit of the Boone Bridge versus a full bridge replacement option. The study considered the French Prairie Bridge as an assumed parallel bike ped facility, obviously to be built in the future, but this was important for us to consider for the corridor as a whole and in considering bike ped movements in the corridor. In terms of developing costs for the options that we evaluated, our budget kind of constrained our efforts there, and so we worked to develop planning level cost estimate ranges. And those really, and I'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation, but we considered the southbound aux lane that I mentioned, interchange improvements, as well as a northbound aux lane extension. So currently there's an aux lane on the Boone Bridge, and the idea would be to extend that aux lane back one entrance ramp, so back to the Oregon 551 northbound entrance. And then lastly, the study sought to identify risk items for each option that we evaluated, as well as necessary next steps that would need to be taken to develop more of a project programming estimate in terms of costs and reach a 15% design milestone, as the budget that we had for this study really allowed us to get closer to a 3% kind of planning level estimate range. So just to be clear, in expectations of what we were able to do with this study versus where we would need to take next steps. So along the lines of our approach, looking at the two options for the bridge, the consultant team's primary tasks were really centered around geotechnical analysis and conceptual bridge plan designs. And this illustration on the screen, it's intended to kind of give a sense of graphically what our assumptions led us to in considering the concept for a new bridge. And I don't want to take too much time with this, but just to point out that the kind of gray hatch lines indicate the existing bridge supports, and the green images on the screen indicate a proposed replacement bridge. So there would be fewer spans, larger supports, but some assumptions for the study really were to try and maintain as much as possible the existing alignment of I-5 and maintain existing clearances of the bridge. And one other thing I'll point out is the blue kind of shapes on this graphic indicate locations where our preliminary geotechnical analysis recommends the need for ground improvements to stabilize the banks and improve the seismic resiliency of a new bridge. So that kind of brings us to our summary of the study's findings. And the couple of big findings from our study, really the study recommends replacing the Boone Bridge rather than pursuing a seismic retrofit and widening. And this is because the relative costs, and granted they're early planning level cost estimates and a range at that, but the relative difference between the retrofit versus the replacement was fairly low, not much difference. And so if you're going to take a large expense to improve the facility, the long-term answer really is to replace the bridge. It does away with the ongoing maintenance needs that a retrofitted option would preserve, essentially, which includes some pretty major capital expenses that would have to be addressed in the next 20 years anyway. So the study really really directed us to consider replacing the Boone Bridge. Another key finding is that the existing bridge will likely fail in a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, and so pointing to the need to take action and address this bridge. We did discover that I-5 traffic can be maintained during construction of the project. Again, the work that was done by the consultant is at the conceptual level, but they produced a conceptual traffic staging plan that could be pursued. It's not the only option, but it is showing that we can do that. And then probably the big takeaway everyone's really interested in, and Della already kind of shared it on the regional plan graphic, is that the cost estimate range that we have at this point, and I'll caveat the heck out of it because it's planning level, it's early, they need to take more, do more analysis to get greater detail on it. But our early estimate is that the cost range for a new bridge is $450 to $550 million, assuming that construction begins in 2027. And so then, kind of hinting at that further analysis that's needed, we identified in our study risk items and next steps in terms of further analysis, including further geotechnical analysis that would need to be completed, environmental analysis, traffic analysis, and further highway and structural design to help us reach a 15% design milestone and get a more specific cost estimate underway. Some of our next steps include outreach like this. We're really happy to be able to share this study with the city. And then we expect to be taking this or a similar show on the road to the county coordinating committees in the area, to the French Prairie Forum, likely next month, as well as to the Region 1 Act and to the Metro TPAC Committee in the near future. And then obviously, key next step will be considering how to reach the 15% design milestone to develop that project programming cost estimate. With that, in the interest of time, I'll turn it over to you all if you have any questions for us.
Well, thank you, Scott, for that presentation. Some of the counselors may have some other questions. I also wanted to say how much we appreciate you coming to the council to talk about this, and I've had some conversations with ODOT about this and the cost of the next phase, which is the cost to design the bridge to the next 15%, which I think is estimated to be about, I believe, $3.7 million, in that range. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think it's an estimate at this point, but yeah, I think that's what we've identified in that list of next steps that I kind of quickly ran through. That was part of our study task for our consultant team to help us understand what kind of, order of magnitude would we be looking at for taking that next step.
So that is definitely the next step here, is to work with our legislative partners, our representatives, regionally, locally, and federally, to find those funds so that we can get to the next step and know even more about this bridge. Because as I read the executive summary and some of the detailed report, I'm certainly not an engineer, but I picked up that if you read that report, the analysis of what can you do short of replacing the bridge, as you said, is really not going to get it. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it's not going to eliminate the need for a new bridge because of the way the bridge is built. And I think the bridge is about 60 years old, and so there's a lot more information. We won't go into that, but lots of good information in the engineering study. Also wanted to point out that we're interested that the French Prairie Bridge idea, the bike ped idea, is something that I think has been talked about in our community for many years. And so the way that can be incorporated into that bridge is still a good question, as well as the utilities that are now associated with the current bridge. So I think it's as we go forward planning for the bridge traffic flow and utilities associated is really important. And Council President Aukerval mentioned in the last presentation how important our business community is to us. We have a very strong business community in Wilsonville, and this bridge actually definitely serves Wilsonville. It also serves the entire West Coast. As I'm sure you know at ODOT, this is your work. But obviously, this is the way people get from Mexico to Canada. It's the way they get from Wilsonville to Portland. It slows down freight traffic. We hear about it from people who visit us. We hear about it from people who live here. So we really need to move forward. I see that Councillor Lehan has a question.
Yes, I just wanted to say we've been looking at this for as many years as I can remember, and we're very pleased to get the aux lanes that we have on the northbound side. And we were eager to get aux lanes on the southbound as well, but I have to say that I think this is a superior plan to replace the bridge because of its age, and a more comprehensive look, I think, is definitely the way to go. I would hope we could do it on a somewhat faster time schedule than that if we got help at the federal level with some sort of infrastructure planning, and funding. But I'm very supportive of doing a bridge replacement. I don't know how it works. I'll read more about the engineering. I see those. I'm very pleased to see that there would only be, and this plan would only have 2 feet in the water. I mean, 2 pilings in the water instead of 4, but that makes quite a bit wider span in the center span. So I guess there's some magic way that they've engineered that to work. I don't need to know about that just yet, but we don't want it to fall down in the middle. It's not a suspension bridge.
Well, thank you, Councillor Lehan. And I really appreciate ODOT's attention to this, and certainly the aux lanes really have made a big difference, and we'll be in contact.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much again for the time. And yeah, if you do have questions or follow up, feel free to contact me or Matt, and we'd be happy to chat further about it. But yeah, I recommend folks, if you're interested, I can email out the project website so folks can, if you don't already have access to it, you can see the summary report, technical report, etc.
I would like to get that map. The map you showed at the very beginning that showed all the, maybe we have it.
And we'll make the at least a PDF of the presentation available.
For the presentation, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was there will be more information. I think we can put the executive summary on our website if we haven't already. And at this point, I would like to welcome Martin Mondalvo from Public Works to talk about response and recovery to the winter event.
Hey, Mayor, before we move on, I think it would be appropriate for us to thank our representative, Courtney Neron, who's really been the spearheading these efforts at the legislature. She's been such an advocate for this project, and so I didn't want to move on without thanking her publicly for all of her great work.
Yes, we certainly do thank her. I'm very pleased to say that again and focus on the efforts of Representative Neron to work to get the initial funding for this initial design. And she and I have talked a lot. The next step is we're going to be communicating a lot more with Representative Neron and other legislators about this. So thank you, Representative Neron. We couldn't have gotten to where we are without her. Thank you. With that, we'll move to Mr. Montalvo.
Evening, Mayor and council members. This is Martin Montalvo. I'm the operations manager for Public Works. As you know, our community's been responding to the recent weather events. I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you here, and I hope that this works. We have a video that's linked to this, and I know the video will play, but I'm hoping the audio comes through. If not, I will rely on Beth Wolf's capable hands to guide us through it. So let me get this going here. So just going to give you an update on our recent response to what we're just calling the February 21st winter storm, or the ice storm. I'm going to play this YouTube video for you, and can you hear the audio?
We don't even see it yet.
We don't see the video or hear anything yet, Martin.
Stand by.
Make sure under more that you share your computer audio.
Yeah, Beth, do you have this presentation? Do you want to drive and share that video? I've been trying to...
We can share it in here, can't we?
A while, I've been having issues.
Hold on one second. It's loading.
Virtual meetings.
Okay. No pressure.
Decades. Ice, snow, wind, and more ice hitting our communities hard. Governor Brown even declared a state of emergency. And many of our customers have had to deal with the power outages and not knowing exactly when their power will come back on. That makes the stress and uncertainty of this storm even worse. There were multiple points across our system that were damaged during this storm. Lines that come from our power generation plants, substations that connect those power plants to neighborhoods, and power lines that deliver energy to your homes and businesses. The hard part? Outages happen throughout the storm. Wind, ice on power lines, falling trees and branches. All of these things have caused extensive damage, and many of you have been without power for days. As we fix one area, falling trees take down other areas, and even cause outages somewhere that we just restored. It usually isn't just about fixing one line or one power source. All parts of the line, from the power plant to your home, need to be repaired before it's safe to deliver power to you. We are working as quickly as safety allows to make repairs. This type of work is extensive and, unfortunately, takes time. It may be many days before we can restore power to everyone, so we thank you for your patience as we work to safely restore power for all.
Thanks, Beth. Appreciate the help on that. So I will go back to share screen. So to give you guys just an update of, we wanted to share that video with you, give you some information regarding the recent power outages. I know that affected a large portion of our community. Our outages were predominantly limited to the Charbonneau area. We had a few portions in Old Town, a few other scattered areas throughout the town, but the largest hit area was Charbonneau community. Throughout the entire city of Wilsonville, we had one of the fortunate experiences of being right on the belt of the ice belt. So if you drove to Sherwood, they got about a foot and a half of snow, but very little ice. If you drove into our community, we got ice. And this is a photo we wanted to share with you. This is one of the white oaks that's along Graham's Fair. This photo is just something we pulled off of Google Maps. And that's the current status of that tree.
Oh.
So as you can see, what happens with these ice storms, it's a gallon of water is 8.8 pounds, and it typically just sheds off. But when it freezes, that weight starts to build on these trees, and they literally will shatter and collapse. I can share a little anecdotal story for you of some of the things that happened at Public Works as we were staffing our facility. So to give you some background, we knew the event was coming. We knew it was going to be bad, but we didn't know the full extent of how troublesome it was going to be for the community. We have a pretty extensive winter weather response plan that every year we dust it off. We do training for the guys in the early fall, make sure everybody gets certified on their equipment. And we dusted that off early last week, working with all of our partners in parks and the other departments. And we started doing 24-hour shifts beginning on Wednesday, February 25th. We also started staging and staffing a lot of our supplies. So as you know, Public Works is scattered all over the place. We don't have one convenient home, and we don't have anything that's really hardened to be kind of an operations center for the needs of this community as Public Works as first responders. So we started moving things around, getting to the right place so that we knew what our problem areas were and trying to respond as quickly as possible. We know what road closures we need to do, and we put barricades there. We know where we're going to have some typical flooding issues if the rain or if the snow turns into rain, and we get sandbags there. So we started moving everything around. Even with all of that forethought, we had 2 or 3 of our facilities that we are just now being able to get back into because of the severe impact of the down power lines and trees. We're trying to figure out some other methods to circumvent that in the future. On February 14th, on that Saturday evening, on the 13th, we called in all hands for staff. So we'd been doing 24-hour shifts. There was staff on hand predominantly doing mitigation, just minimize the risk of public safety. Once it got to a point where we felt it was safe to bring staff in, it was all hands on deck. We put a call out to all of our staff on Saturday evening, and I'm proud to say that every one of the Public Works and Park staff that we rely on showed up to work the next day. To a person, we did not have one person bow out. So the action plan while we were responding, during the actual ice storm, it was triage. It was isolate, protect, public safety during the ice storm. So we had staff members, supervisor that was in the shop working dispatch, and then staff members out on the roads. Initially, when it was just snow, we were preparing to respond to snow and ice. When it turned to ice, we took an approach of protect the public and put out barricades and cones whenever possible. The tools that we have to fight ice are very limited. It's not just us, it's throughout the region. So we took the approach of do what we can for public safety. We started getting trees down early on Friday evening. We tried to mitigate that to the best possible, and then we literally had trees crashing around staff. We had a near miss, and we called everyone back to the shop, and we rewrote the rules of engagement for how we were going to respond to this. That's when we went to triage. We did do our road closures, got those put in place fairly quickly. Once it was safe to get staff going back out into the streets, we took a deliberate approach of focusing on the major and minor arterials. The interstate basically serves as our backbone, and we can get our community moving north and south. So we took the tactic of we're going to open up the east-west major arterials and minor arterials so we can get traffic moving within the community. Our partners in ODOT have done a good job of keeping the interstate open, so we focused on everything else. One of the other things that I'm proud that we've initiated very quickly was our emergency fueling plan, especially once we started seeing that we were going to have a lot of the city facilities and our community members on emergency generators. To give you a little more insight, this photo, let me back up. This was taken outside of Public Works on, I believe it was Saturday morning. All the days just kind of blur together after a while. Just to show you the level of ice that we were building up on the plants. This was on Sunday morning as we started getting crews out, trying to minimize some of the impacts within the local roads. And then this is just an example of what we were doing on Saturday when we decided we're going to triage and protect the roadways. So we put out every single cone and barricade that we had in our inventory, and we are trying to get them back. So what else have we done? So as I mentioned earlier, we initiated our emergency fueling plan. We did have a few city facilities that were affected by the power outages, one of them being our level B reservoir pump station. That's one of our most critical pieces of infrastructure in the city. It feeds water up to the sea level, which sea level basically covers the entire northern portion of town. And we had emergency generators running there, as well as 2 of our sanitary lift stations, as well as providing fuel to our wastewater treatment plant, which went 4 days without power, running on generator. And then lastly, we were able to assist one of our assisted living facilities in the community that was having issues with their emergency power getting fuel, and we were providing them with fuel for several days. A few days ago, we were able to get all the major arterials cleared. Earlier today, we started beginning on the minor arterials, basically picking up a lot of the north-south connectors. So Kinsman, Town Center Loop, Parkway, the northern portions of Wilsonville Road, all of those essentially have been cleared. We've taken a targeted approach to parks. So we needed a work area within Marassi Park to start putting our debris. So we hit that right off. Once we got that cleared and safed up for the guys, now what we're doing is a targeted approach of opening up our pocket parks. If I can get the pocket parks open for the community members, then we can give them a safe place. You'll see all of our parks that have now been reopened are highlighted in green. If I can get them there, they've got a safe place to recreate where I don't have to worry about them being in Marassi Park, which is much more dangerous because of the size and ages of trees there. So I will tell you, we'll continue this approach. Marassi Park will be the last thing, Memorial Park will be the last thing that we take a really hard effort at, and that may be closed for quite a few weeks until we can get the work done in there. The last thing, we initiated several emergency contracts. So we're fortunate that we had 2 contracts for arborists, for tree trimming companies to assist us on just day-to-day stuff. And in those contracts, we had a little foresight, and we wrote emergency clauses into them saying that if there's an emergency, we get first dibs, and that we're going to pay this amount of rate, that you're not going to have cost escalations on us. So I'll go over burn rate for you here in a few minutes, but I'm happy to say that the cost that we're paying is significantly less than some of our partner agencies in the region. The map you see here, this is current as of today. Everything that's in green is open and safe. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're starting now to focus on the northbound roads throughout the community, and we anticipate having all of the northbound corridors, north and southbound corridors, safed up by the middle of next week. So let's talk debris. So this is a 40-yard dumpster, and in that is the mulch that we've been collecting from just exclusively the right-of-way. So our rules of engagement basically say that we are going to clear anything from one outside edge of a sidewalk all the way across to the other side of the street to the other outside edge of the sidewalk. And that is anything that poses a risk to the public. Now, within the city of Wilsonville, the adjacent property owner is responsible for all of the street trees. But for the sake of public safety, for the major arterials, we take an approach of we prefer public safety over ownership of the tree and responsibility, so we try and safe it up as much as possible. For just doing that work over the last few days, we've collected 480 yards of debris. Okay, that's 12 of these containers that are solid filled to the top with mulch. A few days ago, then we're on day 2 now, we opened up our community debris site at the West service station, or the West Transit. We've had an enormous response to that facility. So on day 1, we collected close to 7,000 cubic yards of material that community members brought to the debris center. So the approach to debris center is many hands make a light work. If you wait for the city to come by and take care of a lot of these problems that in many cases are not the responsibility of the city, it will take years. if we get everyone to collect their individual debris and to help their friends, neighbors, community members bring it to a site, and then we can expedite the disposal of it, we'll get the community back to normal in a much more streamlined manner. This is the same approach that they use in the Southeast for hurricanes. So as of this morning or this afternoon for day 2, we're at 14,000 cubic yards. Once that gets shipped by eventual shipping contractor that we're going to be bringing in, we'll be able to reduce the volume by about half. So this was a photo I took this morning at about 10 a.m. So what we'll actually wind up disposing on our estimates is about 7,000 cubic yards as of today. Realize this site is programmed to be open to community members until the 25th. So for scale, sometimes people have a hard time visualizing what a cubic yard looks like. The material we have down there at West today, if you chipped it all up to this 7,000 cubic yards, it would cover a football field 4 feet high with wood chips. We're on day 2. So one of the things that we are organizing for the community members this weekend, this Sunday the 21st, is a community debris cleanup event. And again, many hands make for light work. We are basically playing matchmaker between people with capabilities and people with needs. They're registering with staff that are taking down people who need assistance with moving their debris. They may not be able to move it. They may not have the capability to move it, may not have the right equipment, and partnering them with people that meet those needs. And then we'll be getting those volunteers out to help these people this Sunday and then bringing them over to the disposal center. And then we have a debris contract that, thank you, legal, very much for all your help. We just put it in place to bring a contractor in the 26th through March 1st for 4 days that will assist us with converting all of this larger raw yardage into smaller chipped yardage. So what's this going to cost us in terms of a response effort? So first of all, we are tracking everything for hopeful FEMA reimbursement. So the city's declared a state of emergency, the county and the state have all declared a state of emergency. There's several bureaucratic hurdles that we have to jump, both as a city, a county, and a state to qualify for a federal declaration. I know that it's been submitted, but there's been no response from the White House to date. I think they're still waiting on, we have to meet a certain monetary value for each of those thresholds, both the city, the county, and the state, before you can qualify for a federal declaration. And we haven't met those numbers yet. We are preparing what's referred to as a FEMA initial damage assessment. My staff is working on that. We have until the 23rd of next week to turn that in. And it basically outlines for the federal government what we feel as a community our impacts have been. And we are still awaiting county and state damage totals. All those roll up to the federal government to see if you qualify for a federally declared event. So one of the things that we track for emergencies is your daily burn rate. And I'm going to share a few numbers with you. So everything that you see here on staff daily rates, these are things that we track in our asset management system every day for everything we do. On a just average day, we're spending 196 man hours between park staff, public works staff, and some volunteers that have really stepped up from some of the other departments to assist us with the response. So those are just labor hours across the line for everybody that's chipping in. Labor costs, and most of this labor cost is covered within the existing budgets for the departments, but realize that's labor that was programmed to be doing something else in most cases. We're running about $8,500 a day in labor costs. And then running our equipment has a cost as well. So in terms of vehicle costs, we're expending about $3,600 a day in equipment costs. So for our community overall, we're spending a little close to $12,000 a day in responding to this effort. Then we have contracted costs. I mentioned that we have several arboreal contractors that work for us. They're specialized crews. We do not have a bucket truck. as a city, so I can't get anything that's more than, 10 or 12 feet off of the ground. So I have to bring in either a crew that has a bucket truck or a crew that has tree climbers. And on average, for the 2 contracts that we have, crew runs about $1,900 a day. So let's just round it up from $2,000 a day for a crew of 3 persons taking trees down aerially. I have 3 crews doing that right now. There are 2 that are dedicated specifically to just Charbonneau, and I'm happy to say that all of French Prairie is wide open. We've collected 90% of all of the debris down there. We're doing some final cleanup and saving some of the widowmakers that are along there, but we're confident we can be out of Charbonneau and reassign those crews by tomorrow. And then I have 1 crew that's working through the parks and safing up all of the large oak trees that we have within our parks. And then once I get them out of the parks, we'll reassign them to other areas. Other contracted costs, so the debris site, to bring a contractor in to mulch that material, our estimated cost is $18,000. And then the total disposal cost is still something we're investigating. We're trying to figure out some cost savings as some alternative disposal options, but we haven't figured that completely out yet. So that's it for me. I'll hand this over to Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Montalvo, Mayor Fitzgerald, members of the council. Thanks for having me here tonight. This has been yet another overwhelming week for our community. We've been through a few of these over the past year. As you know, there's been devastating and widespread impacts to our urban forest because of this winter storm from the past weekend. The Planning Division has been working hard to address these impacts. At this point, we are still in the assessment and emergency response phase, trying to get a handle on the conditions in the community. We did respond quickly over the weekend. We got information ready to send out to the community at first thing Tuesday morning. We created an online portal so that people could quickly submit an application online. Even if they were out of power or internet at home but had their phone, they would be able to do it, which was something we didn't have prior. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for our residents. And then first thing Tuesday morning, we reached out to the different homeowners associations in the community, encouraging them to reach out to their residents and potentially help organize a single coordinated permit application for multiple trees that were impacted within their neighborhood to try to set up some efficiency. The message that we've really been sending to the community is that if you have severely or damaged or fallen trees, those that are creating a hazardous situation, to go ahead and get rid of it and remove it. If the property owner has a damaged tree that is not creating a hazard, we are instructing them to remove the fallen debris, but then have an arborist come and assess the tree to determine if it actually needs to be taken out. Sometimes these trees actually do not need to be removed, even if there's significant pruning that needs to occur. If we can save the tree, it actually makes it cheaper and easier for the resident and is better for our tree canopy in the long run. We're giving folks 60 days to submit a permit from the event. This is an extended period to what is called out in the code. We're doing this to give citizens and us more time to immediately respond to the emergency and then work through the logistics of replanting at this scale. All of the permits are being processed through our most simple type A process, and we are waiving those fees. We are tracking all of that, again, for the potential FEMA reimbursement. And as I mentioned, we called the HOAs first thing on Tuesday morning to encourage them to coordinate with residents on a single permit, both for the efficiency of the residents, but also for staff being able to process these a lot faster. Since the week started, there have been nonstop phone calls, emails, front counter customers. We have more coming in. We've also had several staff go out and drive around the community to try to assess the situation and get a better handle on the severity of the situation. And I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about what we're hearing and what we're seeing. We've had contact with approximately 40 individuals regarding their emergency removals. The vast majority of those are resulting or have resulted in an emergency tree permit removal. We've received 15 emergency removal applications through the new portal, and most of those were complete applications where we didn't have to follow up for more information, which has saved both citizens and staff a lot of time from our usual application process. So that's been a big success, and we can, I'd like to give a shout out to Beth Wolf for helping us to do that pretty quickly, first thing in the morning. There are also 3 neighborhood or joint applications that we're aware of and expect to receive soon, each of which covers about 8 to 12 trees within the neighborhood. The majority of the requests and calls are about severely damaged trees. We've only had a few where they've actually had to do an assessment by a certified arborist. Most of these are basically split in half or already laying on the ground. Those are being handled by private arborists and HOAs. We are seeing some patterns. We're seeing more reoccurring calls from Maury's Landing, Wilsonville Meadows, Park at Maryfield, and Village at Main Memorial Drive, as well as Villebois. Areas with pear street trees and plum street trees have been the hardest hit. Most applications are for pear, plum, birch, and some types of maple. We've also observed issues with willow and some of our older big leaf maple, which do tend to get internal rot. We've also seen a lot of the invasive cherry trees that are in our natural areas be impacted. And then some of the Zelkova, which were widely planted in Villebois and in other neighborhoods, we've observed that a number of them have failed, but it's about 10 to 15% of the trees. And it appears that it's those that were middle-aged and that the ones that actually were a little bit older, about 15 years plus, looked generally to be okay. We also noted that a number of HOAs or private owners of natural areas may need support moving forward to clean up and best manage those areas for the long-term health of those trees. In particular, staff noted the Upland Forest Preserve and Grand Point natural areas had been severely impacted. I'm also very sad to report tonight, besides all of those numbers, that a number of significant or historic trees were also impacted in our community. A number of historic white oak, including the one that Martin showed you earlier, and also including the historic Three Sisters oaks. The middle one there was severely damaged. Oregon white oaks and Grand Point at Villebois also saw damage, and a number of other significant preserved trees in Villebois that were part of that integrated parks plan and creation of fabric of the neighborhood. We lost some of those trees in the storm. We do think that most of them could potentially be pruned because we need to get arborists out to look, but it is likely that 1 to 2 of those may need to be removed, including the oak near Villebois Drive and Barker. So we are trying to work on how to assist community members through this process beyond just trying to make it as simple for them as possible, especially right now as they're trying to respond, many of whom were impacted with lack of power and other things. We think that there may be a need to assess trees for pruning versus removal moving forward, and we'll look at potentially one of the arborists that we have to do that once the immediate needs are taken care of in our parks and other spaces. There is still need for cleanup, but we are working on that, as you heard from Mr. Montalvo, and we've also seen that the community is really pitching in to help one another to get this done. We anticipate that there may be individuals that need financial assistance, so we're looking at potential ideas on how to assist with assessment and, if needed, removal for those individuals. Given the extent of devastation and loss, we are also working on a street tree replanting event or assistance program of some kind to ensure that we do have reforestation, particularly of our street trees, and to really help out our community. Some of them have already been hit hard by the ongoing impacts of COVID or other events this year, and just need a little extra support in helping to make sure that these things get done. What we have heard from a lot of community members, my observation when driving around the community is that you could probably multiply the number that you see on your screen right now of applications we've already received. You can probably multiply that 3, 4, probably even more times over to get at the actual number of trees that were impacted. I'm sure most of you have noticed that as you've been going around town over the last few days. A lot of people don't know that removed trees need to be replaced and replanted. So we are also working on getting more information out there regarding that, and that reinforces the need for us to really provide some type of replanting assistance, even if it's just merely in the form of organizing the process and events for the community. Staff is working together on those details, and we hope to have more of that worked out for you, and we can share more of that at future meetings once we get through this initial response phase. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Bachel, and thank you, Mr. Montalvo. That was a wonderful report. Great information. I'm almost speechless, actually. I'd like to ask some of the other counselors if they have any questions about this. I know we're going to really update our website, and the more that all of us can do to direct people to the website, they will get, you know, real current information there.
Dan Carlson, Marie.
So any other questions?
Hey, Mayor, we do have one more staff presentation from the building department.
Oh.
And I do want to thank the council. You know, this presentation violates rules 1 through 20 of any PowerPoint presentation that I normally do. But this is important information. There's been a lot going on, and I think it's more for the community because council has been kept up to date. But Dan Carlson, I did ask to share some of the building code issues that we've been seeing in the community. And so if you could just indulge him for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I think you can open it up for questions from council.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Carlson.
All right, good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald, members of the City Council. My name is Dan Carlson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the city's building official. If you can advance to the building slide, that would be wonderful. Just want to give you a very brief update tonight on the building department's response to the storm. On Sunday morning, essentially, when we first learned of some of the major impacts and that this was going to be a continuing, ongoing event, we posted my contact information, my cell number, and my email address for anybody who had any building-related issues as the event was unfolding that they needed to talk through and just discuss. I had a number of people call me and just needed to talk through things. Oddly enough, well, not oddly enough, most of the calls were about trees. So a lot of concern about dangerous trees and that sort of thing. We had on Wednesday, we drafted a list of frequently asked questions for what does and does not need a permit. We really wanted to just squash any sort of anxiety whatsoever with, you know, do I need a permit for this or that, and just put it out there that if you have cosmetic damage like painting, gutter replacements, siding, broken windows, damage to your roof, those are all cosmetic things, and they do not need a permit. I just wanted to put that out there, but also just to reinforce it, if you do need a permit for things that are like major structural damage, like your roof is collapsed or you have a major section of wall that's, you know, you've had a tree come down onto your house, that does need a permit, but we're going to do everything we can possibly do to either issue that permit over the counter or within a couple of days max. So really tried to streamline the permitting process for that if needed. The other thing that we offer to do is all of our building inspection staff have what's called ATC training, Applied Technology Council. There's training for post-earthquake events and post-flood events. So we're trained and qualified to go into structures and evaluate them using a rapid assessment process post-disaster. And so we've offered that, and we've had a number of community members with questions and just wanted an expert to come out and just take a look at their building. And so we've been able to do that, and that's reassured some of our community members. We were called upon to go down. One of our inspectors was down in the Magnolia neighborhood on Magnolia Street in Old Town, and noticed a gigantic transformer laying on the ground with power lines draped over the top of a car. And so we really elevated this to the attention of the city manager. Brian in Public Works, Delora did a fantastic job reaching out to PGE and really trying to elevate that as a safety concern. And so consequently, we were able to go back out the next day, still having issues with the power, obviously, and I think today they still don't have power. But we were able to do door-to-door wellness checks for each of those neighbors. And that was really a nice connection to be able to make. And just the last couple other things. I just wanted to take this opportunity, if anybody is watching, just please be mindful of, if you don't have power, do not run your propane heaters or your generators indoors. Please run those outside so that they're properly ventilated, because you generate carbon monoxide by doing that, and carbon monoxide is lethal. It's odorless and it's colorless. You won't even see it coming. So please make sure that you take precautions. There have been some stories in the news lately about people who did not and have suffered as a result. So, and then the last thing I'll mention is that, we're out of the ice now, and roofs, are pretty much, they're thawed out. But one of the significant worries that I have as the city's building official is as things thaw out and drains are direly needed to drain all of this water and snow and melt off of roofs. If those drains are plugged by debris or ice or limbs, that can really cause a significant amount of weight on those roofs. And we've actually seen in some of our neighboring communities, I think Troutdale just had a Safeway store that had a roof that collapsed because of that. So for business owners, homeowners with flat roofs, make sure you take this opportunity to pay attention to your roofs, to clean those gutters, clean those drains out, so that if this happens again, that we don't have more significant events. And I'll just say it's really been a pleasure. I so admire the work of Public Works. Martin, you and your team, it's just been an amazing job planning. It feels like we have a small part of this, but it's an important part, and it's a collective team working together, and it's an honor to be part of that.
I appreciated Mr. Montalvo showing that PGE film at the beginning too, because I know all of you interacted with PGE a lot, and the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Maria Pope for PGE, has been in contact with our city, and obviously they want to get all this done yesterday, and they're still working on it. So all of the people who have participated in getting us to where we are, again, back to neighbors, helping neighbors, family, and all of our city staff and contractors, PGE and other utility partners. Thank you. Is there anything else to add to this, Mr. Cosgrove?
I think that's all, unless there are questions from council. We have staff that just presented that will stick around, and if you have questions, if not, they can go back about their business.
Councilor Linville.
Well, I'm going to make some of the my comments during counselor comments, but while we have Miranda and Martin and Dan here, I just really wanted to say a personal thank you, and please pass on to your staff as well how much the community members appreciate everything that has been done. Pretty incredible work, and so thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Lehan.
Yes, likewise, I wanted to say, I think the park staff, Public Works building, and a whole bunch of others that often don't get mentioned that I know are working on the edges, and also the city manager. We kind of stumbled in the beginning with our communication, but once he got the communication coming, it was coming like a fire hose, and we got the information we needed because as a council, because of course people were asking us. I also think compliments should go to the Charbonneau community and the Leos, Greg and Rachel, who spent several days trying to pull those CERT teams together, and the response they got in Charbonneau, because that was what really was a major concern, the number of fragile people there. And I know the city crews and the community teams were as organized as they could be to try to get help to the people who needed it and information to the people who needed it. So anyway, I just was very impressed with the community response, especially in Charbonneau, and I'm presuming Councillor Linville was a big part of that also. But just kudos to everybody.
Well, thank you. And Charbonneau has a large number of residents, and I think we'll be hearing about how all of that came together. They helped each other, and others helped them for a long time. And in a smaller neighborhood, Old Town, they also have done a lot of coordination among each other and with the city. And as Mr. Carlson said, still working toward that wonderful day when everything is repaired there, which we hope is really soon. So thank you. And now we will let our city staff call it a day, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, Council President Aukervall.
Thank you. I think we could all just echo our thanks and our appreciation for city staff and everything that you have done for all of our residents the last couple of days. It's really been incredible. The last 12 months, I mean, this has been, right? How many times have we shared this message? Thank you. And I am so grateful to be in Wilsonville and to have such an incredible staff and incredible neighbors and, from all sides. So I did want to ask one point, and maybe this is coming up under the city manager's business or legal business at the end of the meeting, but do we need to do something to confirm that emergency declaration that we put into effect earlier this last weekend? I want to make sure that that's a key piece, right? And making sure that everything's documented and we have all the opportunities available to us. So I want to make sure if we needed to do anything on that as a council.
Mr. Cosgrove?
I guess I would ask Martin if we need to, do we need to extend that, or what's your thinking?
So you do need to fully ratify it. I didn't notice if it was on the agenda, but the mayor and council members need to ratify your emergency declaration. So you can declare it, but council has to validate it at the first available opportunity. So that would be today.
Well, I would like to maybe ask Council President Ackerval to make that motion, and do we need some wording suggested by the city manager?
I think you could just say that the motion is to ratify the emergency declaration that the city manager authorized on, what was the date that we did that?
Saturday, the 13th.
Saturday, the 13th.
I'd like to move that our council will ratify the emergency declaration put into effect by our city manager on February 13th.
I'll second that.
Motion to ratify the emergency declaration made by the city manager on February 13th has been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
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 The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
If I could have one other update I'd like to give the council.
Yes.
So you had asked for an update on vaccination clinics, and I'm happy to pass on to the group, and I still can't provide too many details. We're working with some of our regional partners, and there will be a large-scale COVID vaccination clinic that will be opening in our community later this week. It actually opens officially on Monday. We've been helping them with several permitting. Both Miranda and Dan have been involved with the permitting issues and some logistical issues through my department. But that facility will be opening up on Monday. They were setting up today. And we actually went in and cleared some trees for them today so that they don't have any impacts to their parking. So I just wanted to pass that along. I know that was a big issue for the council, and we wanted to make sure you knew about it.
Thank you tremendously. That is just amazing and wonderful. And so before I just can't say thank you enough for that, and we want to respect the order of kind of announcing this as was described. It'll all come in due time, but brighter days ahead. And thank you for the incredible work of your department. Councilor West.
Thank you, Mayor. Question on the vaccination. I mean, I probably did a few hundred vaccines today. I did a long shift at OHSU vaccinating today at the airport. How do you staff, or do we know anything about staffing or volunteering to actually do that work? Do you, like say someone like me wants to go and as a nurse and says, I'll go vaccinate for an afternoon or for a day. Is that information coming out on, like, if I want to do that, if I want to go help vaccinate people in the community?
So we're still trying to keep some of the information of the clinic. It hasn't publicly been released yet until they become operational. The concern is, as you know, working at other clinics, that people will spontaneously deploy thinking I'll hang out here and maybe I'll get a vaccine. The fire district is the one operating the actual clinic. We've assisted them with logistics and some planning, what the public works specialties. I know nothing about taking shots, giving shots, how that works. But if you are interested in volunteering, then I would reach out to the fire district and let them know that you're qualified and that you'd like to assist. They are looking for volunteers, and the city is assisting them with several things. And some of those may be having some staff volunteer for like administrative purposes. I don't know if there's anyone that they're thinking about for volunteering for administering actual dosages.
If you guys, you can let them know just that I would be more than happy to be medical staff to help with that effort. If they need it, just let me know.
I will pass it along. We have a meeting with them on Monday.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I don't think we can say thank you enough at this meeting. So I think that I wish you to have a good evening, everyone, and we will move on to our citizen input and community announcements part of the meeting. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the City Council on items not on the agenda. It's also a time to address items that are on the agenda but are not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the City Council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, we have, I believe, one, a gentleman by the name of Derek Bliss.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi there. For the
Mr.
record,
Bliss.
my name is Derek Bliss. Yeah. Hey, for the record, my name is Derek Bliss. I reside at 11205 Southwest Champoeg Court, Wilsonville. My testimony here is going to be slightly different based off of what I've learned through the council meeting here. One of the points I was going to bring up was if the city planned on doing any type of community effort on helping citizens with debris efforts. So I did learn some good information from this meeting that I'll pass along because the community I live in, which is River Green, about 155 homes, everyone I've surveyed there so far wasn't aware of this. So again, I will be reaching out through our HOA and let them know about this. And as a community, we were going to pitch in and try to do something as a community to do that as our neighborhood community, I should say. So I will pass that information along. I just grabbed some stuff off your website, maybe create some flyers or at least get that information out. I would ask that if there is any consideration to extend that past the 25th, we do have community members that are working, and weekends are the only time we're able to kind of work on this cleanup, and it leaves us really just this one weekend to do that. And although our cul-de-sac did a really good job of taking a barn building approach to the cleanup efforts is really quite awesome. A lot of the cul-de-sacs have not, and the streets have not, and I just fear that they won't get that time to get the debris together and so forth. But like Martin said, many hands make light work, and we could definitely clear a lot of the streets out if they knew that resource was available, that they could take their own debris there and have that refuse site. So I just ask if you guys might consider passing that past the 25th. That would be great. So since my presentation was going to be more about that, I have a couple extra minutes here, so I'll touch on this. Last year I made the mistake of paying one of my city utility bills and moved the decimal point wrong, so my $197 bill turned into $197,000. Yeah, but luckily we have a great city employee named Chuck Halderstadt who recognized this, personally called me on my cell phone and said, Mr. Bliss, I think you overpaid your bill. I will not be depositing this check for $197,000 and so forth. So we were able to rectify that, and I just want to tell him thank you publicly for noticing that. If I lived in any other city, I'm pretty confident that probably wouldn't have taken place, and I would have had a check go through, and well, I can't cover that. So, and then lastly, 5 years ago, my son gave a presentation to City Hall, City Council, about a yellow blinking light from Wilsonville Road to Willamette Way East. And the city was very responsive, and City Manager Cosgrove was there during that presentation, and it's just amazing how effective that light is after 5 years, and the community really loves that. So it was a great trend, and I appreciate everything the city did for us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bliss. That was just a great presentation. I remember your son coming to City Council, so wonderful result. And I think city staff can probably follow up with you later about those comments.
So thank you.
All right. Now, next up is council comments, liaison reports, and meeting announcements, beginning with Council President Ackervall, please.
Thank you. And I realize we're already past the 9 o'clock hour, so I'll try to move through some of this quickly. It feels like it's been a long time ago now, but February 3rd, when the world was very different prior to this ice storm, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium. I attended their orientation first, and then the first meeting for 2021. We decided as a council a while ago to kind of rejoin our membership with this group. And during the meeting, it quickly became clear that this is going to be an important group for us to be part of, specifically about the emergency preparedness and conservation messaging, different community education channels that will be available to us, print pieces, youth education programs, Spanish language newsletter, and emergency preparedness is a topic that I think is very fresh in everyone's mind right now. We're all probably kind of reassessing what our own situation is and the kits that we have in place and maybe improvements that need to be made to that. So I look forward to continued education for our community that will be enhanced by our membership with that group. We adopted the annual work plan and the budget. And there was also a presentation on critical energy infrastructure hub in relation to emergency preparedness concerns for our region. I also attended the DEI training, the implicit bias training on February 5th, along with staff and our police chief, also a representative from our community, and attended the Washington County Coordinating Committee on February 8th. And then one event that I wanted to highlight for coming up in this next week is the Wilsonville Alliance for Inclusive Communities and the Westland Wilsonville School District. It's going to be showing a film called Intelligent Lives on February 25th from 7 to 9 p.m. It'll also have a panel discussion following. And I haven't seen the movie or the film myself, but I have watched the trailer, and it looks like it's going to be a very powerful piece. You can sign up at the Wilsonville Alliance website, wilsonvillealliance.org. And it's a free event that's open to our community members. That's it for me tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lehan, please.
This is my cue. Yes, I just wanted to check about, I know right now we're in recovery and will be probably for another, month or two, at least, for cleaning things up. And one thing I would mention is that I could have mentioned when Public Works was there, is I really think somebody should come out and take a look at this, at the RV short tree. That's the state heritage tree here, because it will be fine. It does nothing, except it's got some very dangerous hangers up there, and they're way out of my reach, but they're way up there, and Council President Ackerval took a look at them also. It's on the park side of the property, and I know it's closed, but it probably should be taped off or something. There's a couple of really bad ones up there. Anyway, I wondered about going forward after the recovery mode, if we have some forward-looking assessment time that the council is involved in or key staff people are involved in, or how we do that to assess not only with the city, but our other emergency services, fire and police, and PGE, what went right and what went wrong, and how can we do it better the next time. I think we were all taken by surprise about the impact to Charbonneau, because they've always had fully undergrounded power, and it just that whole grid would be gone. I think we were not prepared for that length of time. Was a shock, and the other thing that we hadn't really fully assessed was auxiliary power for these. What the status of our auxiliary power is for especially for senior assisted and other care facilities, because we have 6, 7, 8 of those in town. And I don't know what the requirements are for them to have auxiliary power or what the status of that auxiliary power is, but it seems like something we should ask the question about going forward. Now, I'm hopeful that we won't have another ice storm this winter, but nonetheless, this is when it's fresh in people's mind, we should do a debrief. And I know emergency services usually does that, and probably city staff does, but it would be nice if the council had the option of attending some of that also.
Thank you, Councilor Lehan. Councilor West.
Thank you. I also, on a different date, did the DEI training with the rest of the council. Mayor Fitzgerald, Councilor Lehan, and Councilor Linville were also there with some community members. And so we were able to do that. And then shortly after that, we had this winter storm. So I didn't attend any city liaison meetings or regional stuff, but I tried to, we tried to get the neighbors together, pitch and help. So I just want to give a shout out to all those neighbors that were out there getting trees off people's roofs and finding people that they could and their neighbors, helping clear their yards. And right here on Graham's Ferry, right behind our house, one of the most majestic, beautiful oak trees I've ever seen in my life. I could see it from my bedroom. The light would just filter through its branches, always full of birds. An amazing tree right on the other side of Graham's Ferry, just down from the one that they showed us in the video that kind of snapped into. It literally looked like Thor took a lightning bolt, just right down the middle, split it, fully blocked all of Graham's Ferry. You couldn't drive around it without going onto like the lawn into the landscaped area. So we all got up with our chainsaws and cut down those branches, and were able to clear that road. That is a county road, the county road. But it's sad. I mean, that tree was, it was just like one of those things that just makes you like, you're in awe of, and like you love that it's part of like right by your home and it's gone. And so that's sad, but a beautiful, beautiful storm, but also incredibly dangerous and devastating it's also been to the community. We saw oak trees crash off the golf course, giant oak trees into people's condos, into their roofs, into the windows. I mean, I went through Charbonne, it looked like a war zone. I mean, it was devastating. And so kudos to the community to be really strong. It's interesting how you see the character of a community during times of crisis. And unfortunately, we've had too many of these in the recent couple of years, but I'm always in awe of how we have rallied to people's side and just stepped up, put on our boots and got to work and took care of one another. And I had not ever up close seen how a city can respond in such a powerful way, how local government truly impacts the lives of people so intimately as I have with Wilsonville. So I also want to take a minute in my council comments to just say I'm in awe of our city staff. Brian, your leadership has been I don't know, somebody should like write a book or teach a class on it. Your leadership has been exceptional in the midst of chaos and unprecedented workload. This is not the first time that you have stepped up and really been calm in chaos. And so I want to say I see that, and I know the rest of us do. And I saw Gina Trollha out there driving around, and crew members, and we saw you do what you needed to do in the community, and I just think we're super blessed to have you guys taking care of us, and to participating in getting up and getting the work done that needs to get done as a community. You guys just partner with us so well. So I'm going to take my moment. If you guys, the ability for people to get COVID vaccines has expanded. I believe now if you're over the age of 80, you qualify. If you haven't done so, get prepared, think about it, don't hesitate. If you're at risk, go talk to your medical providers, but spend a lot of the weekend doing that too. So I just want to encourage people to remember that we're still dealing with a pandemic at the same time, and to go out there and to get vaccinated. So that's all I have this week.
That's great. Thank you very much. Councilor Linville.
really thanking our city manager, Mr. Cosgrove, for mobilizing and including Charbonneau in the care and concern, and Councillor Lehan as well, because I think it was with her insistence, and I say that lightly, we really rose to the surface in Charbonneau and got a lot of assistance that I think was really necessary for a lot of people who physically were in danger. And while we had trees and things falling all over, the bigger issues were food scarcity and hypothermia, because people just did not have didn't have electricity for a number of days. And I think with Greg and Rachel Leo and mobilizing our emergency response folks and having them included in the incident command meetings that the city was having was just incredible. And I know that there have been several people who have personally reached out to Brian and thanked him, and I certainly want to thank the city. I saw the bucket out today taking those widowmakers down, and I was slightly inconvenienced in that I couldn't get in my street the way I wanted to, but it was delightful to see them. And we have a mess to clean up, but we have resources that are incredible. So I just really want to thank everyone. I'm not sure how we're going to deal with all the trees down. I mean, replanting is going to be a very interesting thing, just even getting a good count of how many trees are down. The golf course is closed, and we don't know when it's going to open up again. So I just want to say thank you. I was able to get my house to 63 degrees because I have a gas fireplace. And luckily, we did not have a single, that I am aware of, we didn't have a single incident of people bringing barbecues in the house or running their generators too close to their home and carbon monoxide poisoning. And we had food delivered to people that were homebound and had electricity only. And so it's just been an incredible, and we learned a lot, I think, too. We learned a lot of things. So thank you again, and thank you to all the city staff and the volunteers. Our community, we were doing welfare checks on people and trying to find people who needed food delivered, and Greg and Rachel were driving around dropping off cell phone chargers and sandwiches and salad boxes and quesadillas, and I mean, it was just pretty incredible stuff. So 40 years will be just fine if it happens again. That'll be great. So I'm going to real quickly just tell you, I did attend with the mayor the C4 meeting. I'm the alternate, but it was good to be there and listen to that meeting. That was on the 4th. And we did hear the presentation that ODOT did, and we didn't talk about it too much, but that whole issue of funding for the Boone Bridge is going to be an interesting situation. I also did, this was before the storm, I listened in on one of the town center streetscape presentations and listened to some of the citizen comments, and that was interesting. And as it's been mentioned, I attended the DEI training. Our C4 Metro subcommittee meeting for this morning was canceled because of power outages, and I will tell you that through this meeting tonight, I've been in and out. I've been kicked off 2 times. My internet is still unstable. If it wasn't bad enough that we had a 40-year storm, then we have a garbage truck hit Comcast, and all our phones, internet, and cable goes out for 2 days in Charbonneau after that. So here we are with all these people who, if they have a medical emergency, they can't even call. So, you know, it's kind of one thing after the other. I did want to also just reinforce, as Councillor Ackerval indicated, that the DEI presentation on the film Intelligent Lives on the 25th is a really real opportunity, and I'm registered for that as well. And that evening also is the Rotary. The Rotary article, their annual meeting, where they're going to announce their Citizen of the Year. So, and that's a fundraiser. And so if you're interested in supporting that group, you can, I think, bid on their auction items as well. So again, my thank you. I have heat. I have somewhat of an internet. And I'm pretty blessed right now, so I'm happy. So, and I did not have, I had minor damage with a couple of trees, and that was really it. So I just am very blessed. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Linville. And it has been, I'm going to say one more thank you that you just called out, Councillor Linville, and that is Councillor Lehan and her experience in public service for many years is pretty incredible. She has been really helpful to me in thinking things through. She's done so many good things, and I want you to know, Councillor Lehan, I really appreciate it. I have a lot more to learn. You're not asking to be thanked, but thankfully,
you're trying to embarrass me.
I am, but I guess I'm glad that I haven't gone through an ice storm like this before. But there are lots of things to think about, and being able to talk to somebody who's been in the position of city councilor, mayor, and commissioner, and all of this, you've had a lot of experiences, and it really does help. So our city manager and staff also, just what a team. And I know that we're not out of the woods yet, and that's no pun intended, but there's a lot more to be done. So we'll keep our power going and get through this. So we will now move to the consent agenda, and I would like to ask the city attorney to please read the consent agenda.
Resolution number 2860, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing South Metro Area Regional Transit, SMART, to purchase an intelligent transportation system. Resolution number 2879, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the purchase of a closed-circuit TV inspection equipment and vehicle. Resolution number 2880, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to execute a First Amendment to the agreement for provision of preliminary engineering services in connection with the grade crossing improvements with Portland and Western Railroad for Phase 2 preliminary engineering and construction engineering inspection services for the 5th Street Railroad crossing work associated with the 5th Street Kinsman Road extension project. And finally, the minutes of the January 14, 2021, January 21, 2021, and February 2021 City Council meetings minutes.
Can I get, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion on the consent agenda, please?
Your Honor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
No, I'll second that.
We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as read. All in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. This concludes the formal portion of tonight's meeting. Is there any city manager's business in addition to the very thorough report in our packet?
Well, it won't surprise you to know that I do have a few things to share. So I want to start, I guess, with a couple of things that Councilor Lehan raised. I can assure you that we will be doing a hot wash of this event. We will be inviting our responding partners, and I will also include Charbonneau folks that I was intimately involved with on the telephone, including the Leos, Sandy Batty, and Jim. His last name I'm going to butcher, so I'm not even going to try, but he's the executive director of the Charbonneau Country Club. So I will reach out to them at the appropriate time. We will have PGE be involved and other entities that were involved in responding. The thing that I think Councilor Lehan raised was the RV short tree. I received a text from Gina Troja, who's oversees parks indirectly. We have an arborist coming out to that tree, and it will be staked off tomorrow. So I won't need to email you tomorrow to tell you what I just told you. So we're on it. And I guess I just want to say I was able to, I don't know if you all know this or not, maybe you did, I sent you an email, but unfortunately I was on quarantine the whole time. So my time was spent either getting earphone or getting Zoom bombed for basically 12 hours a day. I wasn't able to be out and about with the crews and with Ms. Troja, so I want to thank her because she was out there on the front lines with the staff and she did a great job. I was able to have lunch with the crews today for the first time, and I can tell you they're beat down, but their spirits are high. Many of them look like they haven't shaved in 4 weeks, but they're really, they've made a lot of sacrifices personally because a lot of them have lost power in their own homes, in their own communities. Like Martin said, we have had 100% attendance. Many of them have worked many long hours and overtime, and I can't thank them enough. I expressed all the gratitude that we've received from the community and from council, and they very much appreciated that. So I want to thank you for all the kind things that you've said about staff. It means a lot. So I think that's all I have, Mayor.
Can I just ask, I meant to ask, how many people are we talking when we add up parks, public works, and whatever other crew people are out there doing that work? He said, he had 100% response to the emergency response. Is that 5 people, 50 people? How many people are we talking?
I'm just going to be guessing here, but I would say between parks maintenance and public works, we're probably talking about 28 to 30 people, somewhere in that ballpark. Does that sound right, Laura? 25. Yeah, apparently I guessed okay. It's about 25 people.
Okay.
Not to mention all the support staff behind the scenes, making sure resources are delivered.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to recognize one more member of the community, Mary Elizabeth Harper, who had reached out to the mayor, was really out there in her community on Magnolia, checking in on her neighbors, and helping us figuring out who needed meals, and we were able to do that. Zoe Monahan was able to provide a hot dinner for folks the first night they lost power, and we've added those individuals to our meals program at the senior center. So it's just another reminder how great this community is and how people pull together. And I guess the last thing I would say is that this is an important reminder that for the first 72 hours of any emergency, people, you're kind of on your own. So you need to have a plan, you need to be prepared. And the great thing is that neighbors were looking out for neighbors. And so to Councilor Lehan's point, it's, the after action report is critical because even though we pat ourselves in the back and say we did a great job, there are always things that we can do better. I can tell you I have a long list of things that I know that we need to improve upon as a staff, be it from communications or making sure we have fuel, supplies readily and available, making sure that we're reaching out to convalescent centers. There's a whole list of things and communication things that we need to improve upon. And I would welcome the council if you want to sit in on that after action or a hot wash. We will invite you at the appropriate time and welcome you to sit in on that.
Thank you. Got another thumbs up. Okay. Oh, Councilor West, I thought you were waving.
Quick question. I know we are late. I had some difficulty. I was being asked this, and I heard the link is broke, and then I couldn't find the link. The list of trees that are approved that are native that can be used as replacements came up to me multiple times. And then I know that communities do this, where neighborhood associations, where people do a little small neighborhood network of emergency preparedness and planning, and maybe starting to promote and revisit and helping the community, maybe on a citywide, do a little marketing towards the importance and education around your home emergency preparedness. That's all I got.
I think that's a great idea, and I think we could even have Greg Leo come in and do a presentation to folks and help them get set up and organized, because I know they're very, very good in that area. So we'll take that on. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Now, one more item. Is there any legal business?
Yes, there is, and this isn't going to be so pleasant and thankful, but we did get a gift from the Department of Environmental Quality, which was a notice of civil penalty and an enforcement order. Our Public Works Director is here as well, and we talked about this earlier in the evening, but the city was doing some work to actually improve its wastewater treatment plant systems, and as a result, during the months of May, June, and July, we had some over-the-limit discharges into the Willamette River of various compounds, and as a result of that, the city received this enforcement notice and a $6,600 fine. Now, as we talked about earlier, the city's plant is actually run by a contractor, Jacobs, and they've acknowledged that this in fact did happen, and it happened as they were trying to improve the system, not make it worse, and they've agreed that the fine is reasonable. We do have the option to appeal the fine, but it's the recommendation of our contractor and our Public Works Director that we just pay the fine, but submit a note with it or a letter with it that the Public Works Director and I will work on together, kind of just explaining why this happened. And it wasn't that the city was being careless, it was actually that the city was trying to make the system more foolproof and less likely to cause any contamination to go into the river. So, but we do need to, I just need your concurrence that we go ahead and pay the fine and not appeal the order.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to confirm with the city attorney that we would like to pay the fine and make a report accordingly?
Your Honor, I move that we pay the fine assessed to the city and then communicate with that agency our goals and intentions and why the incident occurred and how we'll do better in the future. I don't know if that's a long motion.
Sounds good to me. Do I have a second? Councilor Ackervall seconded. Any discussion?
I have a quick question about that.
Yes.
Is there, I know that we crossed over the allotment of things that we can put in the river or whatever it was, that number you go over by, she said, you know, we were told if you go over by 0.1 or if you go over by whatever you went over and you can get penalized. I guess my question is was there any environmental damage that we know of, or is this more of like a kind of a warning red flag, or is there anything that we should be concerned of impacting the actual environment?
I think what this is more of a warning red flag. The Public Works Director is here, and she can address that comment. In the order, there has been no cleanup order included in it, just the fine, but I will let her speak to what happens when those overages occur.
Yes, good evening. Delora Kerber, Public Works Director. So as Ms. Jacobson had talked about, that it had to do with exceedances of our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Permit. And as far as, we exceeded in levels of our biological oxygen demand and our total suspended solids, as well as some E. coli limits back in May, June, and July. The amounts that we had gone over were in excess of our permit, as I mentioned, and it was in our effluent that went into the Willamette River through our diffuser of our outfall. As far as any particular harm caused downstream, none that we are aware of. The permit limits are set such that, you know, they want to keep us below a certain amount, and that just re-emphasizing to us that we need to stay within our limits. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Seeing no hands raised to my view here. All in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. The meeting is, I'm just about to adjourn the meeting, and I want to, let me just do that. The meeting is adjourned at 9:43 p.m. We will now convene a brief meeting of the Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency. I'd like to call the February 18th, 2021 Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order and request a roll call, please.
Member Linville?
Here.
Member West?
Here.
Member Ockervall?
Here.
Member Lehan?
Here.
Chair Fitzgerald?
Here. I'm going to read the citizen input statement. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the Urban Renewal Agency Board on items not on the agenda. It's also the time to address items that are on the agenda but not scheduled for public hearing. Staff and the board will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
There is no citizen input, Mayor.
Thank you. Will the agency legal counsel please read the consent agenda?
Yes. Urban Renewal Agency Resolution Number 313, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency Board authorizing the city manager to execute a First Amendment to the agreement for provision of preliminary engineering services in connection with grade crossing improvements with Portland and Western Railroad for Phase 2 preliminary engineering and construction engineering inspection services for the 5th Street Railroad crossing work associated with the 5th Street Kinsman Road Extension Project, and the minutes of the January 21, 2021 URA meeting.
Thank you. Is there a motion on consent?
Your Honor, I move to approve the URA consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilor West, seconded. The motion has to approve the consent agenda as read. Has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. I am now adjourning the Urban Renewal meeting at 9:46 p.m. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.